The end. That's a nice picture. Can we just stay here for the rest of the playthrough? Oh, Dean was recruitable? How did I miss Dean? Was Dean like... That's really weird. So I've recruited every single character except Dean. That is odd. Interesting, interesting. Oh, right. Dean... Oh, Dean was the one that was with Greet, like helping Greet out. Oh, right. That makes sense. Alright, so I did recruit everyone. You can't recruit all of them because you have to choose Sonya or Dean. Dean's the one that died. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. I knew his name sounded familiar, but, I just didn't remember where it was from. But that makes sense. I chose Sonya instead. Okay. The game is over. I want to talk first about the post game because I did look up what it was, and I think Raptor might have told me. Raptor told me a little bit about the post game, but I looked it up for further clarification, and he could correct me if I'm wrong. But the post game is basically a dungeon. They add like a dungeon you do, and I read that you have to be relatively strong for it. That's about all I know. And apparently, it adds to the lore and stuff. Like, it might not have anything heavy, but it's like adds to the lore. And I'm gonna say this right now. I did really like the story and the lore and the world building of this game, but I don't think I'm gonna do the post game. I don't think I would enjoy it if the gameplay like got to me at times. So I'm just not gonna do it. Um, maybe through a glimmer of hope, if I ever want to play Shadows of Valentia again, I'll do the post game. But I'm not promising that. Don't expect that. But I'm not saying it's impossible. Just really unlikely. I mess with the post game. I have fun with the main game mostly, and I think I'm satisfied. But yeah. I want to talk about the game itself. So 6, 7 out of 10, maybe. I don't know, 6 or 7 out of 10, somewhere around there. I'll have to sit on it for a bit. I think that's a fair rating. Like, the game was good. I like the game. I'm going to talk individually about each category really quickly, run them down, and then I'll do a quick comparison between this and Three Houses. Music is good. They got some good tracks in the game. I do feel like the music, again, we're not comparing it to Three Houses, but the music on its own, it's good. The music is good. Like, there wasn't really, like, any super... The only standout tracks I can think of were the final boss map. The final map was really good. I also really like the map that played with Rigel Castle. That was a good track. And then the regular battle themes for and Celica's Act 3 and 4 maps. Like the normal map theme for those. I also really like the first map theme too. So there were a few good themes that stuck with me. But I wouldn't say like, hey, Valentia's got like the best music of all time. But the music is good, and there's rarely bad music that I just want to stop. So the music is really solid. It's really good. Really fits the tone of the game, and honestly, that's about all I have to say about it. It's just a good soundtrack. The game looks beautiful. Presentation is on point. I keep wanting to say something about Three Houses, but we're not doing that yet. On the game looks pretty. It looks really nice. Obviously for the 3DS, it's one of the best 3DS games I've ever seen, and I just really like the art style, love the portraits. I love, even like the in-game models don't look that bad. Like, I think someone said that apparently Awakening and Fates, they don't have feet. So in this game, they have feet. I don't really know those games, so I'm not really comparing it to those games. But even the in-game 3DS models look fine. Part of me wishes this was on the Switch so it can like be pushed even further. But this works well for a 3DS game. It works really well. The voice acting is really well done. Lots of familiar voices. It's really good. The supports... Now, I want to talk about the supports for a bit. I liked some of the supports. May and Bowie's supports were good. Celica and Conrad had good supports. They came late into it. Conrad came pretty late, but he had some good supports. Mycen and I wish I got more of Claire and Alms, but she died that one time. But I'm sure they would have had great because I like Claire. And then Clive and Matilda. So there were some good supports. There were some really good ones. No, nothing like spectacular comes to mind. I do feel like the big problem with the supports is the fact that they're all mid-battle. I just think that if they were more like Three Houses, where they were like a little more like, hey, on people's downtime. I understand like it wouldn't really work as well with the game. I mean, what they could have done, they could have put the supports like, when you're like roaming around the towns, you can like talk to people. They could have put the supports like that. They could have done it like that. Other than that, I don't really see what else they could have done. But it's not a big deal. This is a remake of the second Fire Emblem game, so they were kind of like a last minute addition. They had to like add them in, so it's not really a bad thing. It's a nitpick. It just would have done better for the characters. Like it would have made me like them even more. But then you have memory prisms, which are pretty cool. So there's that. So that's just something I wanted to mention. Next, move on to gameplay. I think the gameplay's fun, except when it's really infuriating. The game just feels really, really perfectly balanced in the early game, and then a little bit of a mess in the late game. Like the early game, you have like, it's like kind of easy. Act 1, Act 2 had some moments where it was like hard but not overly difficult. And Act 3 and 4 are a mess when it comes to the balancing. Like there were moments where it was like, yeah, I'm going through, but then every now and then they would throw a map that's just questionable. New Ababa's Abode, or that one map with Celica, I can't remember, not the swamp map. I think it was the upheaval map or whatever. That wasn't like that bad of a map. But like every now and then they have a map that's just like really, really annoying for some reason, or it just feels like that. Mostly with Alm's side. I didn't really get much of Celica. Celica, Duma's Tower was a nightmare, but other than that, I can't really remember any map with Celica that was a major problem. But the balancing is a little bit of a mess in Act 3 and 4. It just gets really, really frustrating. And as I said, when this game gets frustrating, it gets so bad for me that I just want to stop playing the game. But that also works in the other direction of when it's really fun, I just want to keep playing it. Like it's a fun time when it's a fun time. But when it's a miserable time, it's like seriously a miserable time. I would have quit this playthrough at Doom Tower Celica's side if I wasn't this close. I probably wouldn't have finished the game. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I finished the game because I had a great time. Finally, let's talk about the story and the characters for a bit. Characters. They're good. They're great characters. I have my favorites. I liked Cliff. I do wish Cliff was, Cliff's supports were like Tobin and Gray were good. But I like Cliff. I like Matilda. Clive was pretty cool. Zeke and Tatiana came late, but they were also cool. May, Bowie, I guess, because he's kind of paired with May, but May. Saber was awesome. I liked Saber a good bit. Am I forgetting someone? Claire. Claire was good. The one thing I feel like they fail with the characters in is like their backstories. Like, sure, you get the gist of it. Like, some of them, you get the gist of them. Obviously, some of them have higher priority when it comes to screen time than others. Like, I don't know. Like, May, for example. I really liked May's character, but I can never really feel for, like her background. I understand Fire Emblem has, like, a big cast. It's hard to make everyone relevant. This is a problem with Three Houses, too. But the thing is, Three Houses focuses a lot more on the supports of the characters and building their, like, backgrounds up. This game didn't really have much background for the characters. But this game did have good chemistries. The pairings of the characters were good. They felt like an actual group. I felt like what I really liked was Celica's group felt a lot like, they were going on this journey. I like Celica's group. As a group, I think I like Celica's group more. I just really liked the dynamic that they had. Except when Celica was hiding everything from everyone. But other than that, I think the dynamic between them was really good. Alm's group was good. I like the whole deliverance thing and the whole... They're more war-focused, while Celica's is like kind of the opposite of that. But this kind of bleeds into the story. But overall, characters were good. Maybe most games I play focus on backgrounds. The characters did like bounce off each other really well. The way they got along and the way they had interactions. The interactions, I guess, is the way you would bound that. The interactions were good. I just wish the characters on their own were a little bit better, but it's fine. They were still good. I enjoyed going through their journey. And finally, the story. The story's good. I definitely feel like I'm trying to think. Like, I can't really think of anything bad to say about the story. I feel like more than the story itself might come off as like pretty generic. But I really like the lore and the world building. I really like what Milla and Duma and Alm and Celica represent. The whole like Celica and Alm's childhood. I was told that the childhood arc didn't even happen in the original game. Let me tell you right now, I'm so glad Shadows of Valentia added a childhood arc, because I would not care nearly as much about Alm and Celica and their relationship if that childhood arc didn't exist. That did such a great job to paint the picture like, hey, this is who Alm and Celica are, this is their relationship, this is what they mean to each other, this is what's gonna transpire. And then, like, this game just messes with your emotions. It messed with my emotions a lot. Like, Alm and Celica reunite at the end of Act 2, but then they get separated and get into this big fight, and then eventually they reunite again. But then, like, Celica's like, oh, I have to die to save the world and save Alm. It's great. It's like, it's sad at the moment, but it's, like, great once it all comes together. Um, what else? But yeah, the story, it's fine. I feel like the story itself is relatively generic, but the game does a really good job of the theming and the world building. This world is much better than Three Houses world. I'll say that right now, even though we're not comparing the games. But I think the story is really interesting in the way they tell it. I like the way they tell it. Like, they have Alm's side of the story, and Alm's side is like the generic war side, like you're at war with Regalia, and then Celica's side is like about a journey. Celica's side feels very FF10. It feels ripped out of FF10, like where it's about a girl, except the whole, like, I mean, Celica doesn't really know she's gonna sacrifice herself, but she ends up, like, eventually she gets those feelings that she feels like she has to. So it has like the pilgrimage side. That's really good. I like the difference in perspective. I was really excited when I was playing as Alm and then being like, oh, I gotta go to Celica. There was never a time where I was like, hey, I wish I was playing as this character right now. They were both interesting. They were both a breath of fresh air. And I feel like Alm and Celica themselves they weren't like super deep characters, but they didn't have to be. They did really well. This game kind of fits a game I love, like Grandia, for example. Grandia has a relatively simplistic premise, but it works really well in its favor, and it's really endearing to go through the journey and go through the adventure. This game's more or less the same thing. It's not super deep or anything, probably because it's a remake of the second Fire Emblem game. But it's great. I think they did well with it. They did well with the story. I was never really bored with the story. Like, sure, I can't really pick any iconic moments in the game other than stabbing the Duma dragon in the head at the very end. But other than that, I can't really think of any like iconic moments that come to me that are on the same par as climbing the end of the world in Grandia. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the story. The story was still it was a good time. It was definitely a good time. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good time. My flaws with the story, probably just Celica. At the end, I didn't really like Celica's whole, like, oh, trusting Jeddah thing. I didn't like her trusting Jeddah. That was probably, like, the weakest point of the story and the weakest point of Celica's character. It didn't ruin her character. It was just, like, meh. It was like, why, Celica? Like, why do you feel like you have to do this? Like, I can get it from a perspective like Yuna, but, like, I don't know. Like, don't trust this evil dude. Like, Jeddah was very obviously trying to trick her, and, she trusted him regardless. It's probably the weakest point. And also she was hiding it from everyone. Like, hiding it from the group. So, I don't know. That was probably a falter in Celica's character. And I can't think of anything like that with Alm. I can't think of any point where that happens where I'm just like, Alm, I hate you right now. Or not hate. Hate's a strong word. I didn't even hate Celica during that. I was just questioning her behavior. Like, a little bit. Questioning why she's doing the things she's doing. Or why she's acting this way. I can't really think of anything equivalent for Alm. I guess the worst I could say about Alm is that there's not much to him in the end of the game. Till the end of the game. But that's not even a bad thing. Like, I guess this goes in line with how they promote, So, I guess this really just means that, you know how, like, Celica evolves to her Princess Zofia class, whatever it's called in game. She evolves earlier than Alm. That's, like, I just feel like Celica's story moves quicker than Alm's. Like, you don't really learn much about Alm till later in the game. That's probably the worst I could say about him, and if that's the worst I could say about him, then that's really saying something. That and the fact that he's a little generic in the early game. But that's it. Alm is still a great character. I looked forward to going through his game still. But like, even though it was a little slower than Celica when it came to learning of him, I feel like Celica was a lot more focused on her from the get-go, and we learned about her a lot faster than But either way, great characters. And Celica are great. I think I like more just because of that, Celica acting that way. And then there's the villains. They're fine. The villains are fine. They have very clear motivations. They have they're to the point. They're not necessarily bad. They're not necessarily memorable, but they're good. They're still fine villains. I could not care less about Brookhood. But the other villains, they served their purpose. They moved the story along. They were decent enemies for the characters to fight. It was never really about them and getting invested in them, but they were villains. They got their job done. They were serviceable. That's about all I have to say. But yeah, overall, story, the pacing feels really consistent, other than the fact that I just feel like you don't really get his character till the end game. But everything else, pacing is pretty well done, honestly. Like, no iconic moments other than stabbing Duma Dragon in the face come to mind, but it's a great story. I remember it, I know it. I just can't think of a specific standout moment. It's good. It's a good story. Probably a 7 out of 10. Although 6 out of 10 when I'm like dying a lot and getting frustrated. So 6 to 7 out of 10, I'll sleep on that a bit. But yeah, there you go. That's Valentia as a game. I'm gonna talk about this with Three Houses. I'm gonna end the YouTube video here in case you don't care to hear about Three Houses and how Valentia ties up to this game. Then ties up to that game. Then I'm just gonna end the video here. But yeah, those of you watching, hope you all enjoyed Shadows of Valentia. I enjoyed it. I greatly enjoyed this game. It was a roller coaster, having fun, really having fun. But when I wasn't, I just wanted to die. But other than Fire Emblem Three Hopes and probably an NG Plus of Three Houses, I wouldn't expect another Fire Emblem game. Maybe I'll play Path of Radiance. I'll play new Fire Emblem games. I wouldn't expect much older ones, though. I'd say Path of Radiance is highly likely, if of any of them. But even then, there won't be too much Fire Emblem that is older. Any new game they release, I'll play, definitely, because I like Three Houses, and this game was also great, too. So, yeah, thank you all for watching. See you all next time.